Welcome to the No Dice No Glory.com Roundtable for the HMGS CyberCon. I am your moderator, Troy Hill, joined by Creighton Jones and a whole slew of Warlord Games people. I'll bring them in slowly, one at a time, but for now, they are going to talk to you about Warlord's new releases and a whole bunch of other stuff. Make sure to turn your camera off and mute your microphone if you haven't already. If you have a question, please type it into the chat and the moderators will ask the speakers during the Q&A session. Now, since we've got him here, should we go with the man, the legend himself, Alessio Cavatore?
Legend.
Well, you've designed a lot of games over the years, most notably for Warlord, Bold Action. What is coming up the pike for Bold Action that you can tell us about?
Well, thank you for calling me a legend. Seems a bit. Thank you for having me. And what's coming up that I can talk about? Before this session, I had a chat with Paul Sawyer, which clearly went, you must talk about this, you must not talk about this, you must be vague about this. So I got my instructions. And certainly, I mean, the thing that is obviously coming out more regularly and will keep coming out regularly is supplements. I mean, you've seen that, you know, we part of what I do now for Warlord is, oh, hello, hi, John. What I do these days is, basically, I help the mail order team to answer the errata questions, basically all the customer services questions, and they tend to filter them out, answer the most obvious ones, and then when they're not sure, they ask me, and I either point them at the answers or I file them for FAQs and go, right, yeah, this one is not clear, so make a list. And the FAQs is updated now more regularly. We try every 3 months, roughly, every quarter to do an update. Coronavirus might have slowed down this last update. So that's one thing. I keep the FAQs. So I expect more FAQs, more updated FAQs to come out. The other thing is books, new books, supplements. And I've been recently working on supplements about the different sectors in Normandy. So there's the American sector, there's the British Canadian sector, and I'm doing basically there's a couple of books on those, and I've been editing them. What I do is I work with the authors. They, like I did for the Korean book, for example, where, and sometimes earlier, sometimes too late, I get involved in the projects and basically work with them. We have, we sit together with Skype, we comment on things, and basically, my role is to make sure that the rules in the books match as close as possible with the core rules, which by core rules I tend to mean the rule book and the armies of. I consider that the core of the game, and the supplements are like around that. So I tend to make sure as much as possible that they match. Sometimes it's possible, sometimes it's not so possible. Like, when somebody goes, armored trains, it's like, I'll put armor trains in Bolt Action, or the Maginot Line, and you're gonna go, okay.
How does that work from a game design standpoint when you are trying to move the game forward through history? I know that you had to work with Grenadiers in Korea. Now you're looking at some other everyone's clamoring for Vietnam, but there's a lot of other little steps in between. What happens in the game design part of that? Well,
there are obviously some elements. I mean, Korea is relatively close to late World War II in terms of equipment, so it wasn't a step. It wasn't a giant leap. Obviously, try to make it easier for yourself by kind of not making a giant leap, but. For example, I mean, John remembers when we were working on it, the helicopters were the thing where we went, oh. So there are some new elements, obviously, that are, considerably present a different challenge, if you want. And there, the decision is whether to go with models or whether to go with rules that represent these things. And because in bolt action, because of the scale of it, we stuck to the idea that we use for airstrikes for airplanes. So basically, they not being models on the ground. But it was very interesting because we did talk about it at great length, whether they should have been models in the game or not. And there were obviously different opinions, of course, as you do in these things, and people would prefer to have them as physical in the game. Some of the people say, well, we didn't do it for planes. There are some optional rules for planes to do that, but they never quite made it into the canon because, again, it's a matter of scale, isn't it? It's a platoon-based game. You don't really, having airplanes that suddenly turn up in what is such a small space, you kind of go, what? It's here, it's gone, kind of thing. So it's a bit strange. So we stuck with the not at this scale kind of reasoning there. Other things that are coming, of course, may include different scales, but I don't know whether I can talk too much about that. No, well, let's create some suspense.
We've got John Russell here in the hall finally, and John was going to tell us all about some new releases. So can we get over to John, let him tell us what's coming down the pipeline, since Alessio's under strict sealed top secret clearance here and can't talk about that. John, what's coming up?
Well, and because my compatriots are here, I'm gonna knock that shuttlecock over to Mr. Morgan, because he's the guy that controls a lot of that now. We've kind of shifted our stuff, so I'm gonna pass that to Steve. But to go back to what Alessio was talking about, and you had talked about Vietnam next, I think some people can take a hint from what we've been doing in our newsletter. And it probably won't be Vietnam, but it's probably going to be because Big John likes it. It's key. And because it's that next step. And it's easier to do because a lot of the equipment is still, we've already got the rules for it. And Alessio and I and everybody like to do things like that when we don't have to do too much to change the rules. It's still pretty much hardcore bolt action. So that little baby step might be, 60, 65. But to answer your release questions, I'm going to put Steve on the spotlight, because he's the one that knows everything, and if he says it, it's okay.
Steve, are you there?
Is that Steve Morgan we're talking about?
Yeah, but you have to unmic yourself, Steve.
I just did.
Yeah, there you go. Hello. Yeah, hot potato from Alessio. Thank you very much. I have not been briefed by Paul about what I can't say. Therefore, I can plead ignorance if I say something I probably shouldn't. One of the big challenges we have at Warlord is possibly trying to do a lot of everything, or sometimes we kind of have a workload that is too much. I'll quickly whistle through what's on our plate at the moment, and then if you've got any questions about that. I'm pretty rubbish at keeping secrets very well, but I'll go through them as I see them. Most of our immediate short-term site is on Victory at Sea. Obviously, before the pandemic, that would have been released already. Everything's been bumped back. So the studio are working really hard getting that ready. On bolt action specifically, there's a lot of work being done on D-Day, which Alessio has just alluded to, and that will include new plastics, as these things generally do. We're going to feature quite heavily over the next 6 months also on the Pacific Theatre. That will undoubtedly come up with a bunch more kits. And what you'll see over the next 12 months to 2 years is a lot more plastics. We get asked a lot, when are you going to do this plastic or that plastic? A prime example being, when are you going to do Italians? We will do them, it's just fitting them in. It really is just finding time for them. Because as technology improves and we get better at what we do, we can go back and we think, well, actually we can do a better job of that. And at the moment, the example we're working on are British infantry, which now, we've moved on a couple of years since we've done them last. So we will be doing some more British / Commonwealth / Canadian infantry for D-Day. And Alessio is working on a bunch more campaign books as well. That fits into other stuff around World War II. We're doing a lot of work on Blood Red Skies. We will be doing a Pacific Theatre Blood Red Skies. That is also, would have been much closer to where we are now, but has obviously been put back as well because of the pandemic. And we will be doing a game, a standalone game that looks and feels quite like a board game, but will tie in Bolt Action, Blood Red Skies, and Victory at Sea / Crawl Seas.
You're not allowed to say that. Oh, wait. No.
Yeah, well, no, you're not allowed to say that.
We are allowed. We are allowed.
Yeah, and that is really exciting for us because on the one hand, it will be a standalone game, but on the other hand, you'll be able to play campaign games with it, and that's fantastic because that will get people who maybe want to play. I don't know. Let's say, for example, I collect Japanese in Blood Red Skies. I also have a Japanese army for Bolt Action amongst many, but I've never done a Japanese fleet. But that game is going to encourage me to do a Japanese fleet so I can tie them all together. So there's that. And then there's all the other things that we're interested in. Well, I mean, my period's Pike and Shot. That's my baby. We haven't got much for that in the pipeline at the moment. But other people within the business have got massive interest. John's is Napoleonics. So you'll notice there's been quite a lot of Napoleonics lately. Prussians are the big thing at the moment. John's very keen, and this will probably be something that's of interest on that side of the pond, American Civil War. We are going to be doing rather a lot of American Civil War stuff over the next 6 months, some of which will fall into a familiar pattern of what we normally do, and some of which will be a completely left field for us, which we're quite excited about. And then there's a whole bunch of stuff around SPQR, Ancients, because Rick Priestley, who's a major influence on what we do as well, he loves his Ancients. So whenever there's somebody within the business who's passionate about something, whether it's World War II or Ancients or Napoleonics or whatever, it kind of drives the business down a certain path, and we release a lot more stuff around that. And I don't think without that passion we'd actually release as much as we do. But that's really what it's driven by. The fact that it sells really well, added bonus. I don't think I've given away too much, but I might have done.
Maybe not enough.
Yeah.
We've seen some new products featured on John Russell's Warlord these days. How are the new sea monsters playing this weekend? Are you guys demoing them at your convention in Oklahoma City?
We have them on the board, and some people coming over trying them with our Black Sea stuff, and they're some people say, oh, you're making it fantasy, and oh, I love the fantasy. So it's again, Warlord Games is here to fill your scratch that itch whichever way you want to go. Are we going to do stuff reminiscent of Man War, the old GW? No, we have no intention on making dwarves and elves and stuff like that, as far as I know right now, right, Alessio? But I mean, I do know, I do know that people are enjoying them. They like the White Whale, they like the Kraken, and some of them are talking about using them for other games as well. They're beautiful models. Rachel and the crew down there in the resin room have done some phenomenal kits. The Sea Serpent is just a beautiful model to paint. But people are really liking them, and they are a hit this weekend.
On the subject of fantasy, that's a perfect example of where sometimes the passion for a project kind of gets injected, not necessarily directly from our own studio. So over the next few months, there will be a lot more stuff around our fantasy game, Erewhon. And quite a lot of that is actually being driven from Mythicos Studio over there in the States, who we're working with very closely. And there's some fantastic stuff coming out that you'll see, I'd say, down the pipeline.
Sounds muted.
I may add the fact that you add fantasy elements to the historical game. You're not making the game more fantasy. You're allowing people that want to make it more fantasy to do so, but you don't have to. That's the thing, isn't it? It's a choice. So people can play according to their flavor.
Absolutely. And you're never going to please the purists by doing that. There will be a couple of mutterings and how dare you put these monsters into Napoleonic, but they're not essential to the game. They're a bit of fun.
Excellent. John Russell's been real big on the Judge Dredd stuff. I know that we've got some sci-fi gamers in the audience here. What is coming up for Dredd Strontium Dogs, Gates of Antares. What on the sci-fi side? What's coming?
Is it aimed at me again?
Yeah.
Oh, this is where I could get into a lot of trouble. Yeah, Judge Dredd, because I love Judge Dredd. And Paul in our studio is a massive fan of Judge Dredd as well. Dealing with Judge Dredd, we've just released, or in the process of releasing, some new models. There will be more characters through the history, because the fantastic thing with Judge Dredd, the comic strip, is there's so much to draw from. And Paul's got rather a long wish list of things he wants to do. And the guys at Rebellion are really easy to deal with. Now, the deal with them is that we will do further games. Some of them will be Judge Dredd. Some of them will be other titles within 2000 AD. I don't know enough about exactly what's coming down the pipeline for those. But I just know that we do have an agreement to do a lot more stuff with them. Antares is something I'm hugely passionate about. We've obviously got some new rules in the works. There will be an Antares version 2. When exactly that hits, I don't know. But currently, I'm working on something on Boromites. There are other people working on particular armies. And what what we want to do before that actually comes out is build in a lot more of the background, actually build in a lot of the things that make people want to be attached to a certain faction or army. And that's kind of a lot of the work that's being done at the moment, because the rules themselves are fantastic. It actually plays really well. It's the background and the fluff and the history and why should I play this particular army that is a lot of the work that's being done at the moment.
Excellent. Trying to build on what you talked about there, just a little bit of new rules coming out for Antares. Is there upgrades to rules coming for any of the other major game systems that we know of? The big one that everybody asks about is Bold Action version 3. So
I'm gonna stop you right there because I can see Lesio's eyes rolling. As of this moment, I think it's safe to say that we have no plans for 3rd edition. Okay, I'll just say that, squash it right there, right, Lesio?
I didn't. I was prepared for that. I mean, I was told this was what's coming, and the answer is correct. We are not. It's not in the schedule. It's not being scheduled anywhere, etc. But of course, the rules, as I said, we're doing erratas and FAQs, and of course, at some stage in the future, there will be a version 3. When? Not a clue, not planned, not scheduled. The big, huge decision there would be, if you do it, then what do you do with it? Because, again, it is the classic, it ain't broken. So really, it's not a lot to fix. You're hesitant to do anything with it because you're afraid of ruining something that is, doing rather well. So it's like, let's not destroy our golden egg goose. Kind of
Well, I think, Lesio, like you've done, I think that the FAQs, the quarterly, twice a year or 3 times a year, 4 times a year, releases of FAQs are perfect for that right now. We don't need to do a complete rewrite of something, like you said, it's not broke, so let's not fix it.
On the FAQ, the biggest change recently was Tiger Fear. Can you tell us what's coming up? Maybe give a little hint on the next FAQ. What's going to hit, whether it's Tiger Fear or something else?
Well, I mean, Tiger Fear is a very good example of an interaction with the community, because we knew there was an issue with Tiger Fear. Obviously, we were aware by playing, going to tournaments, listening to feedback, getting questions, that obviously Tiger Fear was an issue, was a hot potato in rules terms. So eventually what we try to do is to make an errata which addresses some of the concerns with it. And so, like, okay, we like to fix it like this and publish the errata, very much with the intent of throwing it out there and say to people, play games, see how it feels, and talk to us, and we'll see whether this needs to be, if the pendulum went from it's too good to is now not good enough, if it needs to be somewhere in between. And it's a difficult conversation because, obviously different people have different opinions. There was a lot of very strong reaction at the beginning, and just immediate, which obviously means people have not yet played the games. Because I think, you know, when you read something is very different when you actually play it. And then you go and play it. The idea would be go play it, let us know, feedback, we'll see what to do about it. Of course, the pandemic didn't help a lot, hasn't helped a lot with playing lots of games. Give us feedback. So this kind of, it seems to have gone quiet a bit. We'll keep monitoring and see how it goes. I mean, the main point of that Tiger Fear specifically is that, of course, people say, well, it's you know, giving that advantage to an expensive tank like a Tiger, not too bad. The problem is that the Tiger 4, so the Panther 4,
Tiger Fear.
Panzer 4, the Panzer 4 gets the Tiger Fear. The Panzer 4 gets the Tiger Fear, which is a cheaper tank, becomes really effective for a cheaper tank, and therefore people are like, well, could you not just leave it to the big cats and not leave it to the Panzer 4s? And unfortunately, in background terms, in terms of what the rule is actually about, is specifically about Allied troops being afraid of weaker tanks because they thought they were bigger tanks. so actually, if I take it away from the weaker tanks and leave it just to the bigger tanks, is kind of the opposite of what we should be doing. So yeah, it's an interesting one. We're keeping an eye on it, and we'll keep developing it basically until we get to a place where, yeah, not everybody will be happy, but you know, most people will be happy.
And I hate to interrupt right here, but Troy, I think we can caveat from that question, because Alessio does a real good job of explaining what an errata is and what a rules thing. And I think for the audience to get in the perspective of when we do these FAQs, Alessio's got a definition of, should we rewrite the rule, or we should just change the rule or modify the rule? And he's got a real good definition of what errata should be or is. And I think if you tell that to the people right now, Alessio, that'll help them give us the feedbacks.
Thank you. Yeah, no, it's a good point. You make assumptions, and I think I try to write that in the FAQ and errata document at the beginning, trying to explain it, but you're right, absolutely. So the philosophy is, if somebody has ask questions about the rules, the first thing that I always say to judges, referees at tournaments, or to the guys at the mail order, and the mail order guys, the answer direct to the customers is, don't give people your opinion. Don't tell them what you think. That doesn't matter. Your job, our job, is to say, the answer to your question is here. Point to the bit of the rule, show them, you know, this is where it's answered. If we don't know where that is, our job is then to take action and clarify this. So, like you were saying, John, there's two levels, effectively. And those, we call those two levels FAQ and errata. So if the rule question can be fixed by a very simple, you know, this page 17 says this is black, page 18 says this is gray, is it black or gray? And contradiction, easy, you go errata, page 18 should say gray, not black. So there you go. And you basically get that's an errata, that's the simplest pure errata. And of course, there are areas where it's a lot more gray, it's a lot more blurred than that. And that's where sometimes you go for an FAQ where you actually say, no, we think the rule is clear, but I can understand that you could read it that way. And explain in a bit more fluffy terms what your thinking is. So it's more about interpretation of the rule as opposed to a clear mistake. So an errata is a clear mistake, is a clear replacement of a section of a line in the book. And so we try to do both, either one or the other. And the errata and FAQ is organized like that, as erratas first and then FAQs after that.
Okay. Creighton, our other moderator on here, has been keeping track of some of the questions, and I want to throw it to him so that he can get some of those in for us. Creighton, what's on the question list?
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. First question we have from the list is if there's anything new coming out for Pike and Shot, and this is a question from Ethan B.
All right, okay. What we are working on, if we see anything, is I've seen some briefs floating around for personality figures, characters, generals, that kind of thing. I don't think you'll see any real movement on core box sets over the next 6 months. After that, I'm not sure, but you probably will see sculpts of particular characters from English Civil War or 30 Years' War armies. And they're actually the things that people usually get quite excited about anyway, because it adds a certain amount of flavor to their armies. So we've done a few over the last 12 to 18 months. I know there are sculptors working on a bunch of new character models.
All right. Second question I have for you: how much crossover is there between games as far as roles and forces?
Rules, you say? Rules.
Yeah. How much crossover is there between games as far as roles and forces and etc.?
I'll start off with the family of games, which is basically the Black Powder family of games. There's a huge amount of crossover. Pike and Shot was originally, when I started writing that, it was originally going to be a Black Powder supplement that Rick persuaded me would be a really good idea if it became a rule set in its own right. Hail Caesar is an adaptation of Black Powder rules. They're different enough that you get a feeling and a flavor for the period they cover, but they're effectively the same engine. Other than that, the other games are completely standalone games. Alessio,
well, everybody knows that Rick stole Bolt Action when he did Antares. I mean, that he admitted that to me. But yeah, so if you want, those two are closer because again they represent a similar type of combat where you have squads spread out. Is mostly about firepower, is more modern, so to speak, kind of thing. So there's another. If you want, I would probably kind of group them into another family, like you were saying, Chris, Steve. I was saying there's the Bolt Action Antares, there's the ancient Black Powder thing, and then yes, you're right. I think the other ones are fairly. There's not really a lot of links between them.
We've also got Conflict 47, which uses the Bolt Action rule set quite heavily, and just adds in that sort of sci-fi element, into the weird World War II, as it were. I think one thing to note about most Warlord games is we like to try and break standard conventions of a you go I go system. Everything from Blood Red Skies to Black Seas to Cruel Seas, upcoming Victory at Sea. They all kind of break away from the typical you go I go conventions that you might be used to from other game systems.
And there is a little likeness between Cruel Seas and Black Seas, with Gabriel taking a little bit from Cruel Seas and modifying it more for the historical Age of Sail. There's a little bit there, but Charlie nailed it. It's right. We try to do a little different, and we like to have fun and make it fun. And is it historically accurate without bogging down the system? I mean, there's some great games out there that if you really want to know and keep track of your Thompson machine gun bullet ammo, then yeah, go ahead. But if you want an SMG and let's have some fun, there you go.
Yeah, you're right. We tend to have groups of games which are more similar and cross-pollinated because they, after all, represent a type of warfare, a type of combat which is more similar. So Black Powder, Pike and Shot, Hail Caesar, it's about regimented troops fighting in your rank and files, while Bolt Action, Antares, and indeed the Weird War one as well are more squads of infantry with guns and tanks and vehicles, and then ships and then airplanes. So yeah, those would be probably more working off a single engine and trying to adapt it to different settings.
Good. Question, since we've got the Warlord sales team basically on here. When it comes to the pandemic and how the supply chain has been affected, I know the shipping rates have gone up for trying to get across the pond over here to the US. I assume it's probably similar in Europe. What challenges are you guys finding that you've got to get through as a company to get us the product, whether it's in the UK or overseas somewhere?
I think the biggest challenge we've faced is actually, the biggest challenge we faced in sales is communication, of how we communicate the issues that we have. The biggest actually issues that we faced as a company have all been in production and in warehousing. And the guys down there have done a fantastic job of coping. You know, we employ around about 100 people, and the first priority we have to have is the safety and well-being of those people who work for us. And one of the main issues that we had is that the building we're in, for anybody who's actually been over to see Warlord, is like a rabbit warren with lots of tiny little rooms, and it's exactly what you wouldn't want to have when a global pandemic hits. So one of the key issues we've had is we've had to completely relay our warehouse, relook at how we manufacture, relook at how we warehouse. We've had to strip right back the range that we've been able to offer stores, and that's something we're looking at reintroducing, and how we can safely do that, while assuring that the people who work in those environments for us are safe. That's the biggest issue we've had, and it has led to, certainly at the beginning, a slowdown in the turnaround of orders. But what they've done fantastically well is because we've, certainly from the trade range, the range that we offer stores, we've limited that up until now. It's allowed us to focus on being able to supply those things better. So we're in a position now where we're turning around orders as fast as we ever have, and we're now in a position of taking that forward and seeing if we can broaden that offer again. But that's the biggest challenge we have. And obviously, because if you're the person who's on the other end of that and you want to buy something, you're waiting for an order, you want an explanation of why you can't get something or why something's taking longer. And that's the biggest challenge we have as a sales department, is communicating those issues.
Okay. I'm one of those players that looked at my pile of plastic lead shame over here to the side and said, I can't go anywhere and I can't play anything for a while. Let's start working on this. Oh, look, I've got black powder. So as I started to dive into my Waterloo set, now I've got British, now I've got French, I've got a box of Russian starters set up there. So as I start to fill in my holes and I can't find something in my local supply chain and I go to Warlord for it, if it's something that's maybe not on the shelf right away, is there going to be a severe delay to get it, or does it get worked into a system so that you guys are filling in some of those minor, we don't quite have it, but we'll make it for you soon? How does that work?
If there's anything that's labeled certainly made to order, it will just take a little bit longer.
Okay.
We will attempt to do that. And Lorenzo, who heads our customer service department, who is a fantastic guy, he sometimes drives us insane because his drive for customer service is so, he's so dedicated to it. He does give us a hard time about it, rightly so. And so he's insistent that we put these warnings and statements on our website so people understand that these products here are going to take a bit longer. Please understand that while this situation is happening, this will happen. And so, hopefully it's fairly clear what those products are. But the aim is to get back to some sort of normal as quickly as possible. And where we are at the moment is, I would suggest that probably our supply of the product that sells 80% of our overall sales, we're able to supply pretty well, to a standard that we were before the pandemic. It's the other 20% that, will take longer.
Okay.
And I think, sorry to interrupt, Troy, but Lorenzo's the reason why, and we're not going to beat on our chest, but why we've won that customer service award 3 years in a row. It's mostly because of Lorenzo, because he's been doing it. And it's also because of the guys like Billy and Carl and Charlie. Those are the guys as well. And I know you're going to ask another question, Troy, but maybe we can get Carl and Billy and Charlie to tell them. I mean, everybody knows who Alessio is, and people kind of know who Steve is, but they don't know that Billy and Carl and Charlie, the guys that work in the shadows, I guess you could say. If you maybe get those guys to explain what they do, that might help our listeners and people who watch us later on. 3 guys involved as well.
Okay, let's start with Steve. Tell us who you are and what you do for Warlord, and then we'll just go down the list there.
Oh, back to me. All right. In that case, I'll keep this brief because I've done a lot of talking. I'm Steve. I have been with Warlord for 10 years plus, and I'm the head of sales and marketing. And I wrote Pike and Shot.
No, your mum wrote Pike and Shot, Steve.
As everybody likes to say, yeah, my mum. She's a fantastic author. Love her work.
I guess I'll jump in. So I work for Steve and have done for the last 4 years. And I head up the trade sales side of the business. So all the friendly local gaming stores that you're able to buy Warlord games from, I look after the guys that look after those stores.
Okay, and Billy, I made you a co-host of the event, so you can unmute and tell us who you are and what you do.
Thank you, Troy. My name is Billy. I also work for Steve and Charlie. I represent the North America sales team, and we help all the retailers here in the States and in North America.
Excellent. Okay, anybody else on the Warlord team I haven't got to other than Doug?
Yeah, so I'm the other side of Steve Morgan's sales business. So Charlie and Billy head up the trade side. My name's Carl Oliver Kiriakou, or if that's too much to say, Ollie or Carl. So yeah, I look after the e-commerce side of the business. So any ways that our customers directly buy from us, be that by subscribing to our email marketing, like our newsletters and stuff, or the interaction on the website, which has recently been updated. I head up that area of the business.
Excellent. And those of you listening, if you've got questions for any of the guys, use the group chat. Go ahead and pop a question in there. Creighton's watching that, and he'll flag me whenever we get some questions in. Okay, John Russell, have we covered everything you wanted to talk about? I know you've got a convention going on. Why don't you give us an update there?
We're doing real well. We've got vendors from North Carolina, 2 of them, and we've got a vendor from Wyoming, and we've got a vendor from Louisiana. We're in Oklahoma City, so those people drove quite a ways to bring some of the wares. We've had several people come up and tell us, thank you very much for doing this. We've put a lot of safety precautions in place. We have masks, hand washing stations. Yeah, Doug's got a great mask here. Yeah, so we've got our mask, matches our shirts. We've got attendance of about 80 or 90, which is really good. And we have some medical folks on staff that are taking statistics, and then in 14 days we'll queue or ask the people who attended how they're feeling and stuff, so we can build a template for other folks out there that maybe want to try this. You can do it safely if you make sure you do everything right with the masks and stuff, hand washing stations. The hotel has been over backwards. They respaced all our tables, and instead of being all the same, if you've been to a convention, you know, everybody's stacked up and they're butt to butt bumping into each other. Well, we rotated every other table 90 degrees, so you won't be bumping butts. So you'll again maintain that foot rule. We there you go. Alessio's got his mask. There you go, baby. Ready to go. Exactly. But we're doing well, and in 14 days we'll do a check on our folks to see how they did, and so hopefully maybe some more people can get out there and get their gaming on. We've got 22 people signed up for the Boston tournament, and again, that's widely spaced. We've got more spacing than is required, so we're doing really well there. We gave Lead Pursuit gave everyone 2 ounces of a little bottle of hand sanitizer, so that's going well. Sales are brisk, and things are going quite well. And Doug's been killing it on the Blood Red Skies table. He had the biggest crowd yesterday. The next biggest crowd, of course, is going to be the famous, if you're from the Oklahoma, maybe even Colorado, you've heard of him, or especially Texas, Mike Gomez. And he does the old Avalon Hill game of Circus Maximus in 20 millimeter. His table is 6 feet long, 4 feet wide, and it's the Coliseum. And he has the whips, and everybody's running around. There's 12 on 28 millimeter. It is a beauty to behold. It always fills up. It's always phenomenal. Yes, Billy.
I actually wanted to jump in on the last part of Creighton's last question on how the games kind of intermingle, because I don't think we really addressed the miniature side of that question.
Good one.
Which is to say that a lot of our miniatures do intermingle with a lot of our games. So if you have a Hail Caesar army, you can use it to play SPR. If you, like to Charlie's point, if you have a bolt action army, it's easy to get into Conflict 47 because you have 70% of the army already.
Okay, because it's a 3-play.
Yeah, and there are other, additional things, like if you have a Samurai Pike and Shard army. Rick wrote a list for Warlords of Erewhon, where you can play Samurai in Erewhon. So there are a lot of different ways you can use our miniatures within our different games from a miniature specific standpoint without, the rule changes notwithstanding.
Well, and Doug's been showing everybody how to do the Blood Red Skies, but then also our new Airstrike. And then we've got the big Red Skies planes here. And that's going to be something that we're all very excited about, intermingling with Aerofix. So a lot of the new, through Hornby, the new Aerofix 1/72 scale models will start having little pamphlets in there about how to play big Red Skies. Well, I think that's what we're going to call it. I don't know. That's what we've been, Andy and all of us have been laughing about. Yeah, he doesn't like it. But Doug's been doing some great stuff. And Doug's got some teasers here that he's been showing. If we can go ahead and let Doug talk a little bit about some special little cards he's got laying over here.
You mean I get to leak already?
Yeah.
Okay, so for those who don't know me, I'm Doug Glover. I am not a Warlord guy, full disclosure. One of the hosts of the Elite Pursuit podcast, and because I'm also a podcaster and independent, Paul and John can hate me after I leak these things, and tough luck. They can stick it in their Mitch Reed. So there's my plug against Mitch Reed and the No Dice, No Glory guys. It's been a great weekend so far for Blood Red Skies. We've been actually doing a lot of intro games. They're Midway themed intro games. We still haven't sunk your beautiful carrier yet. I think that's the plan for today, to get that or to bomb Midway Island. But and Mitch is now reacting. He's now angry on the chat. So Creighton, you can ignore anything that Mitch says on chat. You don't have to ask us those questions. But we've been trying to go play with some of the new rules that are going to come out soon. And I think Midway. November.
I think so, Steve or Billy or Charlie. I think Blood Red Skies Midway is for the fall, correct?
A lot of smiles, a lot of no answers. Okay,
I think. Sorry, I was reading the chat, so I couldn't get to the mute button fast enough. I think we're probably looking. This is me. I'm without doubt the most loose-lipped person in the sales team. If you want to ask for leaks, it's usually me people come to. My saying is that it's easier to ask for forgiveness than it is seek permission. But no, the one thing that's kind of holding Blood Red Skies up is the fact that we've got a ton of stuff to release between now and the end of the year, and it's ramping up and getting a bit fast and furious on the releases, which is great. But one of the things we want to try and do is, as we bring new games in, and new editions of games to market, is bring them through in multiple languages so that it has an international impact rather than just hitting those English language speaking communities. So the one thing that might slow the Blood Red Skies Midway set is getting it out in a different language.
Sorry, I was muted.
I guess I was going to roll in and start my leaking then. So what we've been playing with, because John has some, he wants me to promo the back side of the card first, which is, let's see if I can get it to show up. There we go. Sorry, the wonderful Elite Pursuit podcast back of the card. But we've been playing with some of the new rules for Dauntlesses and Devastators. And of course, I've got the virtual background going. So there's your quick leak some cards. Those will definitely come out today as we start playing some carrier games and play with some of those rules. And people are excited to try that out and to get their hands on it, because I think the the other 700-pound gorilla in the room, besides John Russell sitting next to me, was your announcement yesterday that we're running short of boxed kits, aren't we?
Well, that's Steve's thing.
Steve, are we running short of boxed kits? What's the boxed kit plan for Blood Red Skies?
Yes, we are. The main reason for that is, again, the 4 months we've lost due to this pandemic that some people have heard about. We had a set release date for Blood Red Skies Pacific. We had a cunning plan to run out of the Battle of Britain Blood Red Skies about a month before that, and that was on track. Now we've just run out of the Blood Red Skies core box set, and now there are a few months to go before we can release the Blood Red Skies Pacific, especially if we want to do it in French and Spanish and Italian and etc. So what we're doing is we are coming up with a solution to offer a game that gives you everything that you need to play the game, that's not necessarily in the hard box that you see, to get us by, because obviously what we don't want to happen is to be out of Blood Red Skies for a while. And within that period as well, you'll also have the launch of the Blood Red Skies game that we're doing with Hornby.
Yeah, so one of the good questions people have been asking us is, what do we do in the meantime? There's still 16 Blood Red Skies box sets, Battle of Britain, on Amazon. So I'll start the rush now.
The main issue is not the rules, because the rules are available in the Airstrike supplement. The issue is with the items that are on the punch board. So we're currently up with a plan with the studio. I'm talking to Paul about what we can do about replicating those and offering them with the Airstrike for the next few months.
Absolutely, we've had a lot of people say, do I buy the Airstrike rules? What do I do when I do that for clouds and other things? And Lead Pursuit will have a whole other separate discussion about some new clouds and things coming out that we've commissioned. But there's also a lot of really great models coming out from Warlord for Blood Red Skies. So I can pull it up there. Hellcats, there's our quick leak. Have those coming up, especially for us Pacific aficionados. We're happy to see those. So I can paint my old squadron VMFN 533. But
plug there.
I got a little Marine Corps plug there. Double dogs.
And the thing is, every now and again, something will throw a spanner in the works as well. As much as the brilliant, you can have a brilliant plan. For example, this week we had somebody. This is an individual who suddenly decided, I believe they wanted, I think this is the correct number, 300 box sets of Wildcats. Now, you can plan your production runs as well as you want, but right now, that's 2,000 planes. You just can't plan for that.
And there was only 7,000 made during the war.
Yeah. There is a certain madness in miniature wargaming which is just brilliant, and I would love to know the thought process behind that. It's fantastic.
That order might take a while to fulfill. So hopefully that then doesn't bump too much of the other good things we've talked about in the last few months. F9F Panthers, P80 or F80 Shooting Stars. I know I need those for Mig Alley, some guys to beat up on with their mighty Jet 1 card. But those are definitely coming down the pipe, and we're looking forward to those. And if John would have these models, hint to the rest of you, we'll get those painted up in pro mode. But those are some of the things that we're really excited about. And then I know Troy and I have been talking with Mitch on some of the future.
Gathering of Eagles. Perfect lead-in.
I wasn't going to promo myself yet, but hey, since John's the straight man over here, if you have nothing better to do, Indianapolis on Labor Day weekend, and you don't mind wearing a mask and using hand sanitizer and those things, we are going to get together for a Blood Red Skies centric event. So is it going to be people? Well, yes, because I guess that's the new rule, right, Troy, that Indianapolis has put out on us?
Yes, unfortunately for now, Indianapolis is restricted to gatherings of 50, decimated the wedding industry over the weekend.
Yeah,
but now is your chance to get 50 tickets and get them now to get to the Gathering of the Eagles. Get in there now.
Get in now, because there's a big tell you. Yeah. We had 2 signups yesterday.
Yeah. No. But there's a lot of exclusive stuff. The carrier will be there. We'll talk a lot about Midway. We're going to talk about Big Red Skies. Yep. We've got some really fun stuff going on. we have a big red sky scenario chase doodlebugs.
Yeah. So we'll have a lot of fun no matter what you want to do with the game, whether you're wanting to go back to the regular Battle of Britain style, Korea, or if you want to play test some of the stuff that's coming down the pike, we can do that as well.
And we're working on if we can wrangle Andy for a
Oh, he never wants to talk, so we're getting Andy to speak via Discord. Slim to none. So it should be a good time. And once again, we're going to do our best between social distancing, proper sanitization, and everyone has a safe and fun time.
We're getting some good questions on the board too.
I know, and I'm not going to answer any.
Okay, let's kick it over to Creighton, and he can run through some of our questions for you. Creighton, are you there?
I am, as long as you guys can hear me. First question I have comes from Jacob. I have to say I'm really excited about the board game that ties together World War II games. Can you talk about it more, and what sort of components might it have?
Well, can we talk about it more? We've kind of been told not to talk about it too much, but I suppose a little hint here or there. It's something that, like Steve was saying, is designed to be basically to work in two different ways: as a campaign system to link together the three main World War II systems of Warlord, and playable on its own as a board game. So, and obviously, as a board game, we'll have to have a certain number of counters, tokens, maybe small things. I don't know if Father Ted is popular in North America, but there is this sketch about them looking at some cows and trying to explain that these cows are small. Those cows over there are far away, but that's why they're small. So yeah, maybe slightly different size things that you put on a board and you play with as a board game or as a campaign for bolt action and cruel sky, etc., etc. So, Blood Skies, cruel seas. Yes. So yeah, I don't think I can say much more. In fact, I probably already said too much.
Fair enough. All right, I'll go ahead and kick it over to another question then. So this one comes from Scott. I want to retire from my day job and open a game store. Is it feasible? How much is the initial investment to carry Warlord products? And is that comparable to other publishers?
Well, the joke always is, if you want to make $1 million in the gaming industry, you start with 2. But, I think Steve would be the best. Warlord is.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Is it feasible? Yes, it's obviously feasible because there are lots of fantastic game stores all around the world. We sell to game stores, I believe, in about 55 or 60 countries. So that covers a lot of ground. So there are lots of people who are driven in certain ways who've opened stores for a multitude of reasons. Our advice is, don't put all your eggs in one basket. If you're going to open a game store, have at least 5 strings to your bow. So whether if it's miniature games plus card games plus board games, etc., etc. So to bring in the widest amount of people you possibly can into your store, because at certain points of the calendar year, some things go faster, some things go slower. You need to keep up a certain pace all year round. So it just makes sense. And if anybody's saying, well, I'm opening a store, what should I carry? We kind of advise people to do that, is find out what not just Warlord games, but what are the 3 or 4 miniature lines that you can bring into your business? What are the top 2 or 3 card lines you can bring into your business? What are the best 10 or 20 board games? And start there. As for the investment, that depends. I mean, that is a moving feast. You have some people who open a store with $25,000–$30,000 worth of product. You have some people who open their store with $250,000 worth of product. The key thing is, at what rate per square foot do you want that product to move, and what is the average turn that you're expecting? Because obviously, if you're only investing a smaller amount in stock, you have to have that stock turnover far faster in order for you to get a living wage off it. So there is no set answer to that. But the key advice is, don't put all your eggs in one basket. think very carefully about what you want to bring in. And obviously, it's hard work. You have to work really, really hard at it.
That leads in, if I can jump in, that leads into an interesting question for John Russell. You've got the Russell's Raiders that can help with tournaments. Is there something that's going on in the background that we here in North America can do to help get game stores up and running?
Yeah, great question. And Billy and Charlie and Carl and Steve, we've been working on the exact same thing, start getting the stores involved. And in fact, we're going to start a tournament circuit in September. Steve's been really hard, and thank you very much. We've got me and Philip, the good old Paul Walker, the ambassador of Bolt Action, is working on a pamphlet that we're going to have. We've already have the event packs and store packs for help run these conventions. These tournaments at the stores, and those will all feed into the Bolt Action tournament circuit that'll accumulate in the nationals that next year at Adepticon in March. And we've divided North America into 10 zones, and they're fed by different sectors, or 10 sectors and zones. I can't remember how we're going to finalize it, but then there'll be 6 from each of those. So that's 60 people at the end. They'll have an invitation to come to this. So it's an invitation only grand tournament style thing. We'll still have a bunch of Bolt Action stuff at Adepticon, but there'll be a separate invitation only thing for Bolt Action. And then again, this is the first year. We're starting in the middle of a pandemic. We got to start somewhere. We got to plant the flag in the sand and go from there. So we'll be doing that, and with the help of guys with Carl and Charlie and Billy and then the rest of the sales team, Emiliano and Che Murato, we'll all be pitching in to help the stores get this circuit going, and my Raiders will as well help those guys do it too. Now, going to the question, that was an excellent question about how do I start a store, and then Doug's got something to kind of weigh in as well. Ask Billy, ask Che, ask Emiliano, ask Charlie, ask Carl, ask Steve. All these guys will help you. Unlike, I think, a lot of other companies where you have to buy a set block every month, we are more malleable and can fill your needs of your customer and the store owners. We don't force you to buy 500 every month. We cater or customize your selection so we can help you even more be successful. And again, that's not really on my side. That's Billy's and Charlie's and Carl's and Emiliano and Che. They can really help you tailor that. But we will support this tournament thing to help the stores bring more Bolt Action players. And this is just, yes, we have many different systems that might fit in this, Cruel Seas, Blood Red Skies, but Bolt Action is our baby at first, and we'll start from there and we'll go on. And you were going to say, Doug?
Well, I was going to say, because I have a lot of friends who run game stores, and I think there's a lot of good references out there and good places to go for information. The first thing I'll start with is, just like if you like drinking beer, don't open a bar. If you like playing games, don't open a game store. Open a game store because you want to run a business, because you want to serve the gaming community, and realize that you're going to have to step back a little, Scott, maybe from your enjoyment of games, because it's a business and it's a full-time affair, especially getting into small business. And the other part is, go listen to what a lot of people have said about partnering with other game stores. So I'll reference the only podcast more irreverent and foul-mouthed than Leaf Pursuit. That's the Veteran Gamer Reenlisted. So if you go listen to them, they're a 40K podcast. And they, well, they talk specifically, that's true, yeah. They talk specifically with some of their friends that open game stores and what they've done and the challenges they've run into and where they succeed, where others fail. And I will give you the one piece that's common to everything they say. And they say, product is one thing, but gaming space and space that is comfortable with terrain, with people that are fun to game with, that is the key. And that's what takes everybody's time, is making sure that the people that show up don't act like jerks, that the terrain is nice, that there's cold Coke in the refrigerator in all the varieties that people want. And what I'd say is, if you have questions specifically, feel free to reach out to us on the Lead Pursuit podcast. We can put you in contact with other stores in your area, people that we know, and say, hey, reach out to Black Rowan Games, reach out to a lot of the different ones that we know, and they'll tell you what they've learned, because really, like Steve said, that you have to have the diversity. And
Alpha
I know,
Omega up in Boston's a great, Jake Oz, they got great stuff up there. They'll share.
yeah,
They've been doing real well.
every single one of them I've seen has offered everything from card games to regular board games to miniatures games and nights and table space to do it all.
Yep.
Because that's how you really bring in a large enough crowd. But
Yeah.
I'll get off my soapbox now because I don't own a game store because I enjoy playing games more.
And to follow up, that's a good question, Creighton. If you have questions on the tournaments, please give me a holler at jon.russell@warlordgames.com. That's my email address. Just john.russell@warlordgames.com, or my cell phone number. I give it out. I don't believe this is my cell phone, and I'm giving you my personal number. It's 406-579-7704. 406-579-7704. I won't answer it maybe at midnight, but I'll get back to you within 24 hours if you text me. But this is our tournament circuit, not Warlords. This is the bolt action players circuit. So we want to make it the best that it is. So if you got some suggestions, ideas, we'll have a scenario packet that's going to be in the box set for the stores and for the raiders, and we're going to make this as much fun as we can. And we're going to stumble this first year because we're trying to pull stuff up and get it going, but we'll refine it as it goes and make it your tournament circuit.
Just to add on to a little answer to Scott's question. I know I'm not directly in the trade side of the business, but I do take it upon myself to go out and visit as many stores as humanly possible, because an e-commerce store is effectively just a shop front that doesn't have any gaming space, and we need to make it as enticing. So I try and steal all the really good. Two pieces of really great advice I'd give if you want to set up a gaming store. Do that. Go to other gaming stores, see what you like, see what you don't like. Make a note of the ones that are really popular and busy all the time. Ask the question while you're in there: why are they busy all the time? How have they got people in? And the second thing you need to do every day is remind yourself that you are responsible for growing the community in your local area. It's no good just buying, 20 boxes of Band of Brothers and waiting at the curbside for people to turn up with their $50. You need to get people in there. Do that. You need to run events. You need to run tournaments. You need to do whatever it takes for that your location to be the most engaging place in your local area. If there's no stores around you, you might have a really big catchment area. If there's tons of stores around you, you might have a really small catchment area. But it's all about making the best out of the space that you've got. And then once you've mastered that, you can do other really cool things that we've seen happen specifically with Warlord customers, which is add e-commerce strings to your bow, add tournament strings to your bow, add events to your, and that's kind of how all the really successful ones build up. And I know Steve and Charlie might get angry at me, but personally, I think there's a very clear divide between the customers or the people that get it. It's about growing a community. They tend to be the ones that are doing really well. The people that don't get it and are just about moving boxes, they tend to be the ones that aren't doing really well. And it's up to you to decide what really well is, but take ownership of growing your community. That's the best advice I can give to you.
One thing I always say, when we're speaking to a new prospective customer, is that even if it's somebody that's already got the shop set up, and I think it's a nice bit of advice that rings true with a lot of people is, and I was a hobbyist before I worked for Warlord Games, a long time ago, and you go to a friendly local hobby store for the experience, and I don't go in specifically, and you might do, don't get me wrong, you might specifically go in to buy something, but I could buy something from Amazon, I could buy it from Warlord Direct, I could buy it from whatever online retailer I want. But the reason I get in my car and I make the trip to the local gaming store is I'm going for the experience. I'm going to have a look around it, as Steve said, the other things that are on the shelf there. So if I'm going in for bolt action, I do like to have a look around and see what else is on the shelf, and not just that. And this is where it's really important. And one of the decisions that should help you decide whether it's for you or not is I go in to talk to the manager. I go in to talk about my hobby. I want to soak up your enthusiasm for it. And that's tough, it's the same for us as it is for any of the retailer, managers and owners out there. When you're working in the industry, you don't actually get a lot of time to play games and do hobby and stuff like that. A lot of what you're doing is interacting with other people that are doing that stuff. And that's the difference, I guess. Is your passion part of about the industry and for the industry, or is your passion for your hobby? And my passion is for your hobby, not so much for my hobby. And Carl can testify to the amount of unfinished hobby projects I've got. You know, my true hobby is your hobby. It's the retailer's hobby. It's the customer's hobby. So that would be a bit of advice I always try and sort of impart on people is it's about the experience. It's about the experience of coming to the store, and you've got to make that experience as enjoyable and unforgettable as possible.
You make it a destination store. You know, Gajo out there in Salt Lake City, phenomenal store. It's a 3-level store with just about everything you ever want to need. Mythico Studios in Susquehanna, New Jersey, phenomenal. And you go in there and they have an airbrush station set up. They have a painting table set up. They have, let's steal something from the model industry. They have these things called building bulls. So you show up and you bring your models, you sit around a table, you cuss and discuss what's going on, and you can build your models. You interact. It's the community thing. Online stores are fine to maybe get a discount, but they don't. If a brick and mortar store disappears, you no longer have a place to go. You have no longer a place to go buildable. You have no longer a place to play your games. So you got to support your FLGSs and make sure they're taken care of, because if they dry up, you're going to be in your garage with 4 of your buddies all the time, or your mom's basement. So, I mean, let's go. Come on, let's help our stores out there. It's cool to get a discount every once in a while, but remember your local store and make it a destination store. If you've got the best coffee in the world, people are going to come to drink your coffee. You know, that's one of those game store cafe places. You go in, drink coffee, have a good time kibitzing, and then you play some board games. So make them a destination stores. What's that niche in your local area that you can get scratched at your place?
Well, I use the example of Game State in Singapore, and we all know what real estate in Singapore costs. So they're not exactly going to have a huge game store, but their owner, she has been dedicated to building the community, and that's what they're doing first. And when you walk in, and the first thing you hit is the gaming tables. You don't walk into all the product and people to come in and play, and then you hang a left and you hit the product. But also the point I'll make is their people are there to interact about the product with you. I mean, the first question, a couple of her staff guys that I was like, "Oh, you're a Warlord guy. Yeah, our Warlord stuff's over here." And I kind of laughed. I'm like, "It's not what I'm looking for. I want to see what else you have. You know, I want to nose around. I know what I need to buy from Warlord." But they interact with you, hiding behind the painting stand, sitting there working on their hobby, sitting there putting together their miniatures.
You got to interact with
the customer. You got to interact with the customer.
Don't sit behind it. Yeah, exactly.
And I laughed that within 5 talking, and they found out Blood Reds guys, podcaster, visiting from the U.S., all these things.
Boom.
We were all pulled into this niche discussion that wasn't about just pushing product, about figuring out who I was, figuring out why I gamed, what I found interesting. And
what brought you here?
Yeah, we talked about the miniatures they had in the case, and they had some starter set minis they'd painted up. So that is what made me say, well, heck, every time I land back in Singapore, I'm going to make the time to go buy Game State. And if nothing else, just say hi. But if I need to pick up stuff to take to my buddies in Malaysia who don't necessarily have as much Warlord stock as they'd like, then I'd go pick it up.
Santa Claus.
Exactly. Oh, look, I'm bringing more box sets. But that's what really makes that community, I think, at least.
Great.
We've gone down a great rabbit hole with this one.
This is fantastic. Yeah.
One thing you said that is actually, I think, from talking to store owners, that is very important is when you touched upon the drinks, as in food and drinks. I think that obviously that adds a lot to the experience of going to the store and staying in the store, comfortably in the store. And as far as some of them were telling me, obviously that's also quite profitable, because it's about actually making people contribute to the maintenance of the store. So that actually I have gaming tables, but if you come here and play a 2 hours long game on this thing, you're taking space, you're creating an atmosphere, great. But also if you buy a coffee and a sandwich, something like that, obviously some places can do complicated food, but as long as you have a toaster and something like that, you can actually make people want to stay, come over, spend a long time there, and actually you will get, you get to pay for your time and your. So I thought that was if you can, because obviously it's complicated in terms of licensing. I'm sure it's not a straightforward thing to do, but if possible, if you can do that, I think that's definitely a good thing to do for everybody, for yourself and for your customers.
And you're going to laugh because the last pitch that I'm going to make is to not do what another company that has letters in common with Warlord Games does. Have a restroom in your store that customers can use. I mean, come on, simple things like that. How can you have an entire multi-thousand square foot facility where your customers can't use the restroom? And I'll just leave.
I assumed that was the case. I didn't want to get back. I assumed that was clearly the thing.
Let's
That's
go
great.
back to
Scott, I
Craig
hope-
for more questions.
Yeah, Scott, I hope you were taking notes on those because that was almost an entire session dedicated to your question. Moving right along. Next question. For all the Warlord guys, what was the game that first got you into the hobby? And then besides the games that you work on, what games do you like to play?
I'll start, seeing as I'm the first one that's jumped in here. The same as most people, and excuse the dog, is desperate to give me a kiss for some reason. At least the dog does, and the wife's nowhere to be seen. Anyway, 40K 3rd edition it was for me a long time ago. From a proper old school in the UK, like department store, which we don't really have a lot anymore, you know, like certainly in the UK, that kind of multi-story sort of department store thing just disappeared, just ceased existing probably about 5-10 years ago. But yeah, 40K. And then probably one of my go-to games is Blood Red Skies. It's certainly from a Warlord point of view, like it's so easy to pick up. It's so easy to get multiple hits together for it. I was really daunted by the idea of painting 1/200 scale when it first came around. And then I was enlightened by how easy it is to paint 1/200 scale planes. And I've since smashed out at least a squadron of everything we've made so far. So yeah, that's probably it for me, is Blood Red Skies. You can pick up and play it on any size table. It's so easy to get used to the game. You can add and take away elements from it if you want to. And it's about playing the game. It's not about the list you build or the cards that you bring or anything like that. It's all about how you play the game and how your opponent plays the game. So yeah, it's Blood Red Skies for me.
Charlie's a lot younger than I am, therefore I'm really going to show my age now. I got into gaming in general through Dungeons and Dragons. I had an affinity with halflings, which is ironic for somebody who's 6'5". And then while buying some figures, I was drawn to a catalogue with a dragon on it, which was a Games Workshop catalogue from, I believe, 1981. Got into Fantasy Battles 1st edition, modified it to play some English Civil War games, and kind of then started playing BattleTech, using robots and, big robot-y things. Now I'm just a gaming magpie. I mean, what I play now is anything. I still go back to English Civil War a lot, but on the go now, loads of Blood Red Skies. I've got a ridiculous amount of planes painted over the last few months. Antares, Boromites. I tend to be one of those hobbyists who becomes obsessive with whatever they're into at that time. And it could be anything. So Dacians were the thing 5 months ago. Don't know why. They just seem like a good idea. But pretty much anything that takes my fancy. I mean, the biggest army I've ever collected was a Warhammer army of Dark Elves, which had 120 Cold War Knights. So that kind of shows the level of obsessiveness that I go into. And I think I've revealed far too much about my personality with that, and I'll leave it to somebody else.
Yeah, the halflings thing was a bit disturbing. Yes. Right, I'll do my bit. I think it started with these. So I don't know what you can see. Battle game book. This one is World War II. But the series had, when I was really a lad, my grandparents giving me Battle Game Kit, The Wild West. Then Battle Game Book, Galactic War. These are not longer on sale. I think you can find them on eBay. This one is the one on Medieval Knights, is in Italian. So basically what you have here is beautiful illustration of a series of things. So this one is about mounted warriors, crusades, castles, the knight and its armor, heraldry, and then some amazing pictures, and leading to the center of the book, which has 4 games. It's got rules. Each page is a set of rules for 1 game, and it's got playing pieces that you photocopy and put on the book, and then the games themselves. Battle of Arsuf, hexes. So you use the pieces to go on these. The castle, I mean, look at this illustration. How long would you look at it if you're allowed? And then you play the game about the castle, the siege, and so on and so forth. So, weapons, medieval weapons, jousting, and adjusting. So this, and obviously the World War II is, that's the concept of gaming, and then started to play rules of using airfix toy soldiers with those rules, and then scaling it up. But yes, the first serious game was Warhammer for me. Was the first commercial kind of big thing was Warhammer. I played Warhammer in Italy, and then moved over to Games Workshop and started to work on Warhammer. So I did turn your hobby into a job, which is good and bad, has those problems. So that's how it all started. And what's my favorite game currently? In terms of war game, it's definitely Bolt Action. I play Bolt Action. Is the one that I play both for fun and actually competitively. I still go to tournaments, and I always lose because I used to be nasty. I'm sure Steve remembers me when I didn't smile. When would play me was like the Conan approach is what's good in life, what's good in wargaming: crush your enemies, drive them before you.
I'm still emotionally scarred by your Skaven army. Yeah,
my Skaven army was rather nasty. Yes, I almost got myself fired by winning the staff tournament twice with that army. It was a bit nasty. Yeah, so power player, but now redeemed, very jolly friendly player, I'm told, and is to do with playing with John and with the Perrys and people that really don't do rules really. Yeah, Bolt Action, and I play Americans. Americans are my choice because I grew up in Italy and watched a lot of Hollywood movies where Axis were the bad guys and the Americans particularly were the good guys coming over to liberate our countries, etc., from fascism. And therefore, definitely for me, I mean, if you watch the film, I don't know if you know it, very famous, called La Vita è Bella, Life is Beautiful, won an Oscar, etc. If you haven't seen it, watch it. It's quite moving. But I think that film clarifies why I play Americans. You play that, and there's a little kid in a concentration camp that basically the guards flee, and a Sherman tank rolls in, and a very friendly chap pops out of the cupola and goes, "Hello, little boy. Are you alone?" And there you go. Right, that's why I play Americans. That scene, that film. Yeah. There you go.
I can't believe how cool your introduction to historical wargame. That magazine was amazing. My introduction to historical wargaming was a bunch of beardy chaps trying to teach an 11-year-old how to play a game using WRG and 6mm Sassanid Persians. That was my introduction. How I ever got into historical gaming after that. Yours was really cool.
And that's why so many of us didn't play those games, as John and I are remembering.
Got over it.
Any more Warlord guys with starting in gaming?
Yeah, I'll jump in because mine's pretty quick. I'm relatively late to hobbying. I've only been hobbying for about 2 or 3 years. But it started with just going to my local friendly gaming store and picking up a box of Band of Brothers, and then within 24 hours, I dropped like £400 or £500 on British Airborne, German Grenadiers, German Blitzkrieg dudes, I think some Italians. Most of it still on the shelf, shame, over in the corner. But yeah, that's where my addiction starts. Bolt Action for me is the pickup game. If I want to play something that I know the rules relatively well, and even if you don't know the rules, you kind of know the mechanics of the game. It's really easy to play. You play Bolt Action. So yeah, that's how I got in.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I have a relatively quick one, like Carl. I got into gaming kind of like Steve. Dungeons and Dragons kind of started things off for me. Played some BattleTech that got me kind of on the board. For us, my stuff, I'm Conflict 47. I love that game. I love the time period, so Bolt Action definitely scratches my itch. But to be able to throw that weird stuff in there, I mean, Shrek, well, who doesn't love werewolf soldiers? And it kind of gives me that feel for all my Americans in the room for G.I. Joe. That was kind of my childhood. So Conflict 47 kind of mirrors that. And Alessio, I play Italians, so high five.
They're bad guys. I mean,
Yeah.
up to half of the war, then they kind of quite indecisive on what side they're. Which reminds me, when we were designing the Italian army, I wanted to put a rule called invincible in the list as an army special rule, and they wouldn't let me for some reason. I don't know. It was a very simple rule as well. I mean, work like this: if you're playing Italians, and if you win the game, you win the game. If you play Italians and you lose the game, that counts as a draw. Because you actually were on their side kind of from the start, which means that obviously you're undefeatable, literally invincible. You cannot lose. I don't know why they didn't let me do that.
I would have voted for you. And I do play Axis because of that G.I. Joe kind of feel. It gave me the look of the Cobra Troopers, so of course they're painted in the classic Cobra blue.
Yeah, the bad guys always have the best uniforms. It's like Star Wars, isn't it? Like
Very much. Very much.
I'm afraid I'm going to have to leave at this point. I'll leave you at the tender message of the rest of the Warlord guys. So now they can tell you all the stuff they didn't actually want to tell you in front of me, which is quite entertaining. Thank you very much.
Thanks
Bye,
for
Steve.
coming on.
Thank you.
Bye, Steve.
Okay, any other Warlord guys getting started?
Sorry, I just wanted to comment on the Axis force. I often want to have an Axis force because, you know, when you meet a mate and you go, oh, I want to show you how bolt action works, and I only have an American force. So I actually was thinking, what Axis force should I collect? And again, the Axis, clearly the bad guys in my Hollywood-driven history. And so I actually thought, actually the Finns. The Finns have to be the answer because, as far as I know, they were on the Axis side mostly because the Russians were crushing them, and they were like, "Somebody help us!" Because we need to ally with somebody who can help us against these guys. And but actually, when the Germans went, "Okay, we helped you, we gave you tanks and stuff. Now in return, give us your Jews." The things have gone, no. No, we won't do that. You know, they're Finnish citizens, so no. And so I thought, oh. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Good guys. Yeah. I'll play Finns. And obviously, I'm struggling. I have to talk to Steve and how to get a proper Finnish army and stuff because it's not. Yeah. It's a challenging one to collect.
Okay. Last call for anyone jumping in with their starter games. Otherwise, I've got some questions for Doug.
Long time, and it was a good time, and now I play a lot of Warlord stuff. In fact, exclusively Warlord stuff. But I started out with Dungeons & Dragons and Avalon Hill and all that kind of stuff, and did a stint with the GW Fund. But now I bleed maroon. I play Warlord.
Getting back into Blood Red Skies for a couple minutes. Doug, have you heard anything? Are we coming out with Alessio's wonderful Italian factions? Anything else that we haven't seen hit the board yet? Can you
just roll that one out there? So it's a two-part answer, and I won't say that Lead Pursuit is on the bleeding edge of things.
Bleeding edge.
No, I'll say bleeding edge because making your own cards and your own unofficial stuff. Andy was gracious enough to help us stat out all the Italian aircraft
For Malta, yeah.
For Malta, and to do all that. And of course, this is why I don't work in production for Warlord games, because actually getting those things printed on cards and shipped and making proofs and going through all that was eye-poking. But we were going to make the Adepticon deadline. We had maps, we had cards, and hopefully, from what it sounds like, there is now an impetus on the Blood Red Skies side in Warlord to do an Italian release, which I think will be awesome. I have no idea which airplanes. If anyone from Warlord's listening to me, please God, no more biplanes. I hate biplanes. I melt biplanes down.
Yeah. and there's a great example of we're listening to the public.
Absolutely.
And now we can adjust to that. And people can do this.
There was a huge interest. And the only reason we made Italian cards was because so many people said we want to play with Italian fighters and we don't want to have handwritten cards. We want something nice. And then COVID crushed our plans for releasing all of that at Adepticon. But the cards are out on social media in the Blood Red Skies Ready Room. So
and the Aces too.
The Aces are out there, and there's There will hopefully be an official Warlord Italian release 18 months, maybe 24. It's not on the near-term horizon. But from everything that John's told me, everything that my other staff spies have told me, it's coming, which is good. I think what we all have to admit is there's still going to be a little bit of wrangling on some of the cards because I got my game handed to me on a platter flying against Italians as I was flying RAF, and it was a great Malta game. But I immediately went back to Andy and I'm like, you low-costed these Italian aircraft way too much. They're quite effective. So I think that'll be an interesting release. And people have asked for fins. We know that's not necessarily on the soon to be Skyline. There's a lot of other airplanes that need to be done out there, and I think they'll have
F-Force.
I'm not even going to talk about that. Go away. But there's other aircraft that will play multiple armies. And so I know that we're going to, if we ever see Buffaloes, which I hope we don't, I'll melt them all down. But if we ever see Buffaloes, you'll have a chance to play that as a variety of air arms. And I think that's really where Warlord has gone recently and said, hey, we want to make releases that hit Fleet Air Arm, they hit RAF, they hit U.S. Navy, they hit U.S. Army Air Forces, and can get multiple
Flying Tigers.
Right,
Yeah.
you know, having the P-40s out there is great because you can do a lot of different forces out of that P-40 box. The same thing for when we did the Wildcats. It's going to be interesting to see how these all evolve over time as to where we decide the next big release that the community says we're tired of painting it ourselves, or we're tired of scratch building it ourselves. Mark V Spitfires,
Fighters.
Yeah, exactly. Where will Warlord put it on that?
I just listened to the last Lead Pursuit podcast, and you guys talked a little bit about airstrike, and you had some really good points on that. How is it going, and what are your recommendations to people when they move from the core game into airstrike?
Well,
I'll let you start that one.
Well, every time we do a demo on Blood Red Skies, we start out really simple. And I just say, I'm giving you a hamburger with 2 pieces of bread and a meat. That's how it starts. And then I start adding the cards in. And that's the onion, the lettuce, the little bit of ketchup, and how you start putting that extra flavor, extra layers. And this game, Blood Red Skies, is so versatile. You can go completely nutso on the cards or just quick and fast. The best example is, I always talk about at NashCon 2 years ago, 11 guys came up to my booth and said, we want to learn Blood Red Skies. Holy crap, 11 guys? That's 22 aircraft. Give them 2 each. So I went over the table, and from the start of, hello, my name is John, this is Blood Red Skies, till the end, knock it off, we're done, was an hour and 45 minutes. 22 aircraft, an hour and 45 minutes. So it depends upon your level, and that's what's great about the flexibility. And that's where Doug and his crew of Brett and Chris have been just killing it. And our last little virtual gathering of Eagles, we had a great chance talking with Andy, and then Chris and Steve showed people how to do some painting. And now Brett and Steve have gone down that huge rabbit hole, taking some other person's ideas, the Fat Lardies.
Well, so their work on campaign, we'll come back and we'll talk about it. They've got some interesting amalgamations of some campaign rules to try to build on what is in Airstrike, what is in
Andy
the base.
did with this campaign.
Yeah, exactly. Because I think the good and bad thing about Airstrike is it doubled the amount of missions you would do and the amount of things you could play. And we know how the wargaming community is. Everybody wants it to be a 1 or a 0. It's either the greatest released ever or it's the worst thing possible. And so we're still working through, what are we now, 6 months on after release?
Yeah.
We're still finding things in the rules we didn't quite understand how they play it out, or in the scenarios, as we found during the Malta scenario. I thought I knew pretty quickly how I was going to lose that one. And we kept going for a while. So there were a couple different interesting wrinkles that Andy had put in there. So,
well, and that goes back to Alessio. Sometimes will say, people come up to Alessio and say, well, this rule says this. And Alessio will say, well, did you read this and this and this? Did you read the rest of the book? And just cherry picking the rules out.
Yeah.
And you're finding that with your Malta stuff, the nuances and the extra layers of flavor.
Well, and it's one of the discussions we've had with Andy is that Airstrike is a great reconstituting of the rules. I won't call it a version 2.0, but it does have some minor tweaks in there, especially if you're going to start doing competitive play. We encourage everyone to say, hey, you want to be a competitive player, pick up Airstrike, because that is what, at least in the US, people are using as the baseline of rules. And there's a few things in the way they're worded that will that can make or break your understanding of the tournament scene. So there's still a lot to learn from, a lot of games to be played. The community is not as large as Bolt Action. It's not as large as a lot of other games out there. So you don't get people putting through the reps, finding all the little nuances as quickly as some of those other systems. And Tony is muted.
Troy.
Unmute.
Troy's muted.
There we are. With the addition of the ground targets or air to sea, what was your experience dealing with that 6 months in? And has the community reacted well to that? Are they finding the nuances there?
I think they are. The problem is everybody gravitates to their favorite target, their favorite theme, whatever. And so we had people show up in the radio and that said, well, I flew Sturmovix against an armored column, and boy, was that easy. I'm like, well, no kidding. You're flying Sturmovix, you know? so there was a little bit of a discussion that go out and play some more challenging targets. But likewise, we flew, it was one cruiser or one destroyer was the target, and we flew, I think, let me get this right, three engine SM-79s. Yes, Alessio, we had SM-79s out there, 3 Ju-88s and 6 Ju-87s, and we still didn't sink it. Were the dice cold? Sure, whatever. But we found a lot of interesting things with the rules and how hard some of these targets are to kill, that we're like, wow, this is kind of fun. This isn't just go out there, beat up a target, and have the poor defender lose all the victory points because he has to shoot down bad guys. But it's, I think there's still a lot of discussion for airstrike as to whether that will be able to be played for air-to-ground missions in a tournament. I'm not sure we're there yet. I think there's a lot of community work that has to be done before we get to that. And quite honestly, the UK and US tournament scenes are diverging. Probably because of my negative personality. I'll say that right now. But we are doing some things in the US where Trevor and his team down in Florida have been working with Warlord Games to figure out what do we want to do that's creative, that's different, that isn't just I show up with 500 points and a well-crafted deck of cards. Is there a way to show up with 2 500-point lists? Do we keep the cards, the theater cards on the table? Do they become, in a sense, terrain that you don't get to choose and you have to deal with, and you only show up with your trait and your doctrine cards? Or like the guy who shows up with 4 Wildcat aces and a stack of 4 ace cards. Ouch, that hurts.
Yeah. Or how many yaks?
Yeah, or 12 yaks.
12 yaks.
For all my yak friends, do not play me on the table. I will kill your swarm. But yeah, so there's a lot of changes going on with the community, I think.
What about the online community for Blood Red Skies? We've touched on Lead Pursuit. You've mentioned the Ready Room. What and where do people go when they want to jump into this game and learn more about it?
Okay, so shameless plugs. Here's the deal. Warlord has done a great job helping us with information and putting things into a Facebook group called the Blood Red Skies Ready Room that is not an official Warlord mouthpiece. It's run by Ken Natt, a guy out of the UK who's done a great job pulling as much information as he can get, and we feed whatever info, and obviously Andy shows up in there, and some of the other Warlord team, John, will jump in and give his opinion every once in a while. But it's an unofficial place where we can all kind of get together and discuss what we think is important about Blood Red Skies. There is, if you're on Instagram, obviously, we're out there for Lead Pursuit, putting out a lot of what we see. So when we get things we can leak, hint, hint to the rest of my Warlord friends, when you send me JPEGs and screenshots, those things will get redacted and names removed. And you can see on Instagram a lot of the stuff as soon as we see it. So as soon as we get shown what 3D models look like, and as the Warlord team is nice enough to give us some of that information, you'll see snapshots of that out there. But the other thing that I'll say, and I'll make a plug for digital community here, is between the tools of Discord and Tabletop Simulator, there are a lot of people out there playing Blood Red Skies virtually. Yeah. And I didn't realize it, even though I was the guy that kind of threw some of the models together and worked with Steve Toth and Rosalind and a lot of our other team that helped us to transition a board game into a digital Tabletop Simulator mod. There's a lot of people out there playing it that way, and Brett and Chris play twice a week, I think, or Brett, I should say Brett and Steve play twice a week, and they have learned a lot about the game, and in fact, a lot of the online community that's really driving the discussion of rules, discussion of scenarios, and those things is happening because of Tabletop Simulator, not because of us getting together and playing big tournaments. And so that's a huge, interesting feat in and of itself, which I'll once again make the pitch to my Warlord marketing buddies there. The more you allow us to share on Tabletop Sim, we want to be good stewards of your IP. We don't want to just be dumping things out there. But it really, every time we go out there and we put a card out there, people say, oh, that's awesome. I got to play a digital version of a Wildcat. I'm going to buy another box of those, get those painted. So when we come out of this pandemic, I'm playing a scenario or playing a squadron of Wildcats.
It becomes a self-looking ice cream cone. Yes. If you help the community will help you. And that's what's great about Warlord. Warlord listens to its customers, and we'll take what you give us, and if we can, in a cost prohibitive or non-cost prohibitive idea, get it out there.
Well, you haven't given me everything.
That's right.
I still want every single card that I can put into digital format.
That's right. That's right. We're getting there.
Every single model as well.
That's right. And it's good, but it's a start. And I was amazed, as well as Doug was, the amount of enthusiasm on Tabletop Sim. Yeah. And it was, everybody's out there everybody's got their little niche, and this is the way to scratch it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't remember if you guys covered this. Blood Red Skies Vietnam. Is it coming? Is there anything in the works?
Oh, geez, Troy, I tell you, I can see Doug leaning way out. There is.
I know nothing. I say nothing.
Yeah, I can't say that in Vietnamese either, can
Yeah, exactly.
Because of the response, the overwhelming response of McGalley, totally blew us away. We thought it'd be kind of fun, and he thought it'd be fun. It would be the next iteration of Blood Red Skies. Holy crap! But it's gone.
I
nuts.
quit.
That's right. It's gone.
I don't even
crazy.
have my World War II models painted, much less all my Korean ones.
There is something in the works. Andy and Doug and all the guys in the pursuit. Rosalind was a big driving force. Thank you again, Rosalind, for kicking this down some more. Roger Gersh is jumping in on there. And we've got a lot of guys that we've been play testing, and I try to keep up with it, but these guys are going so fast. It's even jet speed. Yeah, you're hitting afterburner. Yeah.
I think we're at a more stable place for it. I don't know when it's going to be released. I don't have any of that data, and I don't know if it's going to look anything like what we're playtesting. Because at the end of the day, it's Andy's rule pitch that he has to make. We've pitched some ideas to him. There's things that he's tweaked, that he's changed, that he's said, yeah, that's way too messy for what I want. Let's make it simpler. But there's also been a theme that Roger and Rosalind and myself have held with Andy of wanting to make the Vietnam era airplanes feel different. And so for anyone who's played Blood Red Skies, there comes a point where you suddenly say, well, does my F-190A, does it kind of feel like an LA-5? There's a little bit of a difficulty to differentiate the airplanes because you have so few traits.
Can't be all generic.
Yeah, and it can't be generic. So we said when we have to go in there and look at MiG-17s, MiG-21s, F-4s, F-105s, they really have to feel different because they fought differently. And if there's any lesson learned out of the Vietnam War, it's that an F-4 and a MiG-17 don't fight the same.
Well, and the big bugbear in the room was missiles. And unguided missiles, infrared missiles, and how do you handle that? And which way do you want? Do you want to make it a model? Do you want to make it a card? Do you want to make? And then you get SAMs. So will it be everything for Vietnam? No, it's a 10-year war roughly. So it might be early war. And what's going to happen, I think, is it's going to be like Big Alley was.
Right.
We're going to put it out there with 2 planes, and we'll see what happens. Does the community like it? Will they grow? And then that might lead us on to introducing a 2-ship, 4-ship, 6-ship. How do you want to do that? How do you want to sell it? It's in its infancy, but again, like a lot of other things Warlord does, sometime.
Well, and we have made some gameplay concessions because we started with doing early war early on, and it was so asymmetrical that I loved it. I had a great time. I had a great time pushing Roger Garish's F-4s around with my MiG-17s and beating the crap out of them. But it was a very asymmetric fight, so we had to take a look at the rules and what was going to be fun for everybody. Are people going to want to play an F-4 with no internal gun, getting in a dogfight with a MiG-17? Probably not, because it's not necessarily always going to be fun if you don't understand your airplanes. Right. So we talked to Andy, and we changed some things around, and are offering a little bit more symmetrical aircraft mix, we think. And once again, what we pitch may not be what shows up in the box.
Well, you want to make it.
But we'll make it fun. We want people to enjoy it.
Some people want to play MiGs, or some people. You don't want to play, Custer's Last Stand.
Which is how many of my games felt. But at the same time, we know that people want to play different areas. They want to take this and they want to play things in the Indian subcontinent. They want to play things Arab Israeli. They want to do this. Taiwan Straits, which was where I wanted to start, but no one wanted to listen to me. So, but we know that we need to offer these kind of options in whatever is released,
right?
Because it isn't just about playing two specific airplane types out of the Vietnam War. So I think that we're going to see an interesting release. I think if you pay attention to Blood Red Skies Ready Room, if you pay attention to Lead Pursuit's Facebook and to things that Andy's posting in there, you'll probably see information start to trickle out about how some of the rules work. Because I think we're at the point we need a more public playtest.
Agreed.
Yeah, and we'll see where it goes. What people say when they say it's horrible, we'll just start all over.
Hey, Troy, I'd love to ask a couple of questions while we have, because I got to leave in 10 minutes, so the camera could go off. It also depends on how much longer you guys want to go. So we've been asking this to a lot of the other folks that we've had on. You know, we've seen a boom in gaming over the last 5 years, the golden age of gaming, as folks call this. What do you think is the next steps that we're going to see in this hobby? I'll give you a case in point. 10 years ago, everybody hated cards in games. You know, I don't want to flip card. I hate cards. Now games, a lot of games have cards. People really seem to love the mechanic. What do you guys see as something that's going to transform our hobby in the next few years? It could be something where you have dual platform, like games that you need a app to play on a pad or a phone or something like that. But where do you guys see us going next as a hobby in the community?
I'll absolutely jump into that because I've got some pretty strong opinions, which are just opinions, which doesn't necessarily mean this is how it's going to go. But I think the cyclical nature of tabletop gaming, be that card, be that model, be that ship, be that 28mm dude, 6mm dude, I don't think the thing that you're moving around is the important thing. I think the reason that it's cyclical is because of the social contract that exists between you and the person that you're playing. You're both invested in having a good time. All being said, if you load up your Xbox and you go onto Call of Duty and there's a screaming 11-year-old at the other end of the internet somewhere and he's shooting you in the face, he has no investment in that social contract because he doesn't care if you have a good time. Where I see it going in the future, I think I see the two things kind of colliding. I see a lot of the really interesting AR technologies that are coming about now, where we see things like Minecraft being played on an augmented reality tabletop setting. So you can have if you've not seen the video, Google it, AR Minecraft, but you can have your coffee table just with a green screen or just normal coffee table, and people can come with their mobile phones and place blocks and move things and do stuff. I see that technology getting off really heavily. And as tabletop games start to get more and more complex in terms of tracking, so a great example would be stuff like Kill Team, Marvel Crisis Protocol, Star Wars Legion, where there's a lot of tokens and management, and that management aspect of the game is important. I see the AR devices, be it your mobile phone or tablet, kind of filling that slot and doing a lot of the management for you, so you can just focus on the game and the social contract between players. That's my 2 cents. That's where I think the industry is going to go. But yeah, anyone else?
I think, yeah, to play devil's advocate, I think, you know, Carl definitely hit some points there that I would kind of dwell on. But, you know, if we, you know, the elephant in the room is Games Workshop. You know, these guys are going from strength to strength to strength. And what are they not doing? They're not doing apps, you know, to track what's going on in the games, etc. They're just doing more and more, you know, of the gaming stuff. And I think, you know, I think one of the reasons the industry is booming so much is because it's, as Carl said, everything's cyclical. You know, people don't want their kids sat in front of computer screens 24/7. They don't want them sat in front of iPads or phones or whatever. And I think there's that social contract, as Carl mentioned, between, you know, 2 people or 3 people or 4 people. And I'd like to think, you know, long term, that's why it's constantly growing now, is because people are going back to something a little bit more genuine, for want of a better word, where, you know, we actually want to get around a table and play some games. Doesn't matter what the game is. And I think that's where Games Workshop have done so well, is because they grab you, and their engagement isn't all about the models and the game. it's the reach that they have in the games, the online games, the mobile games, the books, the soon-to-be TV series. Their reach is massive. But what it all pulls back down to, again, and what it all pulls into, is being around that table with some friends, or even some people you've never met before. But like Carl said, you've got that social contract then of, look, I do care that we're both going to have a good time. Not everybody does. There's always that guy, obviously. But 9 times out of 10, most of us just want to roll dice and have a laugh. Like, I can't remember the last time I won a game. It doesn't happen very often. But I'm more invested in the experience than I am in the actually, winning and being competitive and so on and so forth. So that's just me playing devil's advocate. I do think apps are going to play a big portion in tracking what's going on the table. I could see Bolt Action having off-table assets on an app on your phone and things, and it could be the same for things like Blood Red Skies as well, where, your flak could be an AI generated by your phone. And Carl mentioned augmented reality. Things like Blood Red Skies lend itself to that because the table is flat. And as you're moving your models around a flat table, you can have your phone set up looking down on it, showing the targets that you're trying to hit, such as John's beautiful carrier, etc. But then there's no substitute for the real thing, there really isn't. And as great as augmented reality is, like, what looks better, John's beautiful, aircraft carrier at, to scale with the planes on the table, or having to look at the aircraft carrier through your phone whilst the stuff is out on the table in front of you. And there's just no substitute for me.
Let me throw out one last question. This is probably a hand grenade into a crowded room as I'm leaving and turning off the camera, so maybe this is good. You mentioned social contract. Much like you guys in the development world, we that cover these games and cover the community see a lot of comments. I'm going to go /complaints online. And the unwritten social contract between gamers and companies is one that's often not really well stated. A game will come out, and instead of saying, you guys did an amazing job, I hear, you left this out, you left that out. Okay, I see everybody laughing.
Grognards.
Yeah, 2 questions with that. One is, how do you guys look at the feedback that comes in from social media? And 2, do you feel that gamers really need to play a more active role in certain games? I'll give you a case in point, a game that I worked on. Great War. You left out the Canadians. I'm like, no, we have Commonwealth forces in there, but the Canadians were different. And I go, why don't you play your Canadians like Canadians? I'm not coming to your house and taking away your dice and knocking your table over because you didn't follow the rules 100%. Is that something gamers don't get?
I'll jump in first on this one, because this is what endears me to Warlord games. This is the reason I pursued Steve Morgan and kind of backed him in a corner to give me a job 4 years ago. And, here I am now. And it's because we make rules that are, by and large, and this doesn't always fit with every community, but we make rules. Sorry, that's a phone call coming through on my phone there. We make rules that are designed as guidelines for players to embrace and enjoy, but to play their way. Yes, we've wrote the rules, but it's your game. You're sat around the table with your friends playing it. If you don't like something in Bolt Action the way it plays, house rule it. We do. We played a game of Black Powder at John's a little while ago, and there was they have a house rule of cavalry being able to retreat. Cavalry being able to retreat, and it's a house rule. John's just made it up to fit for the way they like to play, and I think that goes for all of the games that we make. If there's something you don't like about it, then change it. Like, we're not precious about it. You shouldn't be either. And I know that fits difficult with a competitive crowd and so on and so forth. But then if you want a competitive scene, go ahead and create that competitive scene. If you want to, and this happened with 40K, in the ETC, the ITC, they had their own tweak on the rules that everybody was happy to adopt and play. And our game system's exactly the same, and we love the feedback. We love to hear from people what they like and don't like about it, and it does get taken on board. You know, Alessio listens to the crowd, and that's where the FAQs and the erratas come from, etc., etc. But you know, it's your game. Enjoy it, play it your way, and have fun with it.
I'll add, we like to receive feedback, and as a designer, I'm a bit sensitive sometimes about the feedback. I think we'd love to hear what you think. I would put one caveat there, as long as you are polite, because that's the difference for me, is constructive feedback, well presented, reasoned, and say, you know, but the key point for me, the distinguishing point is people that start the sentences was saying, in my opinion, I think. If the sentence starts, I think this, blah, 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 you go, I engage with you. Somebody to say, this is shit, this is crap, this is that, you're going to go, for you. Is that understanding of my personal taste, my personal opinion is just that. It's an opinion. What I like, what I think is right or wrong, is not what that guy thinks is right or wrong. And so people that present things like, oh, you know, yeah, I prefer this bit, I'll change it because I prefer that. It's fine, great. I'll engage and go, actually, that's a good idea. Yeah, maybe we'll take it to the next edition of the game. Great. This is a bit shit. I switch off instantly. I just go, not listening, la 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 la. Because yeah, it's understanding that there's, you know, different people, different tastes, different things. That if you understand that, then you know, we like you, we understand you, we understand one another.
Great answers, guys. I'm going to pop off and turn the camera off to head to the next one. Thank you guys so very much. We may be doing this again in a couple of months, and I want to thank everybody from No Dice No Glory for being here, and you guys continue on with the fun. And you guys could talk for another 40 minutes, and we'll call it the John Russell Roundtable.
Oh, Jesus. Thank you.
Thanks, Mitch. Appreciate it. Now get lost.